Good morning. Welcome to the K-12 Higher Education CIP Joint Subcommittee. Will the Secretary please take the roll?
Senator Canizaro. Senator Dondero Loop. Here. Senator Neal. Here. Senator Severs Gansert. Here. Senator Titus. Here. Assemblywoman Howdigi. Here. Assemblywoman Kasama. Here. Assemblyman Miller. Here. Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Here. Assemblyman O'Neill. Here. Assemblywoman Peters. Here. Assemblyman Yeager. Here. And Chair Backus.
Present. Today we have a variety of recommended capital improvement programs, and I appreciate the Department of Administration already being ready. So please feel free to begin your presentation when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and the rest of the committee. Thank you for having us this morning. My name is Kent Lefevre, and I serve as the Administrator of Public Works. Joining me today is Kirsten Alley, Deputy Administrator of Professional Services, Brian Walker, Chief of Planning, and Dave Dutra, Deputy over the Buildings and Grounds section. A question we have before we begin is, would the Chair like us to pause at the end of each section or just run through the whole thing and take questions at the end?
I think with today, I'd feel comfortable with you guys running through the whole thing, and we can go ahead and answer questions. You're covering each of all of the departments today,
Yeah.
Mr. Lefevre?
Yeah,
Okay.
each section. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Our agenda then today is to go over capital improvement programs, recommendations for the following agencies: the Department of Administration, Maintenance, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Public Safety, the Office of the Military, and the Department of Veteran Services. With that, I'll hand the mic to Brian Walker, who will address the administration.
All right, good morning, chairs and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Brian Walker. I'm the Chief of Planning for the State Public Works Division. I'm going to present the Department of Administration Maintenance Projects. So before I begin, I want to state the emphasis that State Public Works places on maintenance. Our philosophy is to take care of what we have before building new. This is a concerted effort we have, and it's reflected in the amount of maintenance projects in the CIP in front of you. Sometimes this message gets a little bit lost as we breeze through these presentations on maintenance, but just want to remind you that it's important to us. So we're going to begin today by discussing Project MO3. This is the Combined Administration Maintenance Project. So Priority 1 Administration Maintenance Projects have been requested as a combined project similar to the Health and Human Services Combined Maintenance Project from last session. This funding method is similar to statewide projects in that multiple projects are combined to create a common budget and contingency pool to the benefit of the state. The primary benefit to this approach is that Priority 2 projects can be started when savings are realized instead of being deferred to the 2023 CIP. Starting projects earlier saves the state funds lost to inflation and avoids potential system failures that otherwise would necessitate emergency repairs. There are also other benefits. Combined projects share a construction contingency that allows us to reduce the budget contingency from 15% to 10%, which is a savings of $840,000 on this project. And finally, this approach will streamline the delivery of maintenance projects for the Department of Administration through commencing of projects earlier when funding allows, as well as the ability to react to emergent needs before the next session. Oops. So here are the 13 sub-projects included in the combined MO3 maintenance project. I'll go over each of these projects briefly, and we can always go over these in further detail if requested. MO3-1 and MO3-2 upgrade HVAC equipment and installs an uninterruptible power supply in the EATS Data Center located in Carson City. This facility is a central hub for EATS services to agencies statewide and is critical for maintaining network and computer services for the state. MO3-3 replaces the emergency generator in the Supreme Court building, which is 32 years old. MO34 provides critical maintenance to the bottom of the pump generator that the Marlette Lake water system uses to provide raw water from Marlette to its customers. MO35 replaces the emergency generator at the Nevada State Library and Archive building in Carson City. And MO36 replaces sidewalks and concrete benches around the state capitol. MO37 and MO38 replace HVAC systems at buildings 17 and 107 at the Stewart facility at the south end of Carson City. For background, Building 17 houses the Department of Corrections, and Building 107 houses the State Fire Marshal. MO39 installs 3 additional surface water catchments in the Marlette Lake water system and structurally protects the historic tunnel catchment. MO310 corrects site drainage issues on the east and west side of the Attorney General's building in Carson City, which currently has water intrusion issues. MO311 provides additional funding to renovate the Blasdale building's elevators in Carson City. MO312 replaces HVAC equipment at the Early Intervention Services building located at the north end of the UNR campus in Reno. And MO313 upgrades surveillance and security equipment at the state capitol and governor's mansion. The combined budget for these 13 sub-projects is just under $20 million of state funding. This slide shows an additional 9 individual Department of Administration projects and the MO3 project I just discussed for 10 projects in total. Like before, I'll briefly touch on each project. So starting with MO7, MO7 replaces evaporative cooling that does not adequately cool the Flamingo DMV warehouse with air conditioning equipment that will. M22 replaces a structurally deficient server room floor in the Carson City DMV with a seismically rated structure. Server equipment in this facility provides network communication for Nevada's DMVs statewide. M23 replaces the central plant heating and cooling equipment at the Decatur DMV. Multiple parts of this building are failing and need replacement. M25 installs a modern card access system at the Decatur DMV, and M28 installs a modern card access system and security cameras at the Flamingo DMV. M33 rehabilitates the fence surrounding the Capitol building. So a little piece of Nevada history for you guys, just in the middle of this. This fence was funded by the 1875 legislature to keep the cows out from around the Capitol building. It was built by a contract that was awarded to Hannah Clapp, a local educator in Carson City, for $5,500 plus $950 of freight. So our current project will provide a historically correct rehabilitation of this fence. It's going to be a little bit more than it cost to build in 1875, though. But other than that, we're looking forward to it. M45 replaces HVAC equipment at the governor's mansion that is over 20 years old and in need of replacement. M46 replaces a portion of the Marlette Lake water system's transmission main on the east slope. This pipeline is over 70 years old. M50 replaces door hardware at the Capitol building. Door hardware has been replaced over the years with various types, some of which is not historically appropriate. This project will provide consistent hardware along with electronic locks and card readers. So the combined total funding for these 10 projects on the slide here is $5.5 million of highway funds and $34.5 million of state funds. So that concludes my summary of the administration's maintenance projects, and we could stop here if we have questions.
Oh, you know what? We'll
going.
give you. I realized. No. We'll give you a little break. We have Assemblywoman Kasama who has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Since you were talking about the fence, that sounded very interesting. My question just is, are we going to keep the historical look to the fence, or you can just redoing that fence, or it's going to be, it's just nice to keep the historical look versus something real modern or utilitarian? Just curious.
Brian Walker for the record. Yeah, thanks for that question. So yeah, the project is not going to change the look or feel of the fence. It's to provide, I guess we'd call it a historic rehabilitation to just keep it as it looks now, or was what it looked like when it was built.
Restore it. Okay. Thank
Restore
you.
it.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. I was actually going to joke because every time I walk through that, I have to walk around when I have my dog because it's still keeping dogs out of that area. But go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll skip to page 54 to discuss the Health and Human Services projects. Again, Kent LaFever for the record. Today we will present 3 projects.
Mr. LaFever, I'm so sorry. Let me just interrupt you. I apologize. We did have some more questions on admin. I just kind of stopped where you all stopped. If I can just go ahead and, so then we're staying with the topic. We did have a couple questions from Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your information. So given all the state agencies that utilize these services of the Enterprise Information Technology Services Division, how was it determined that that funding, maintenance, and capital costs through general fund appropriations with recovery through the statewide cost allocation assessments would be preferable over the existing cost recovery structure for maintenance and capital costs for the division? How does that pan out? Thank you.
Matthew Tuma, Deputy Director for the Department of Administration, for the record. So thank you for that question. So these projects have been requested in the past and have are of high need for the agency. And the funding issue has been kind of a question and discussed in previous sessions as well. We decided to move forward with funding it through state funds and then reimbursement of the general fund through the statewide cost allocation plan. Many of you are probably unfamiliar with a lot of the technocratic aspects of how SWICAP works, but as you guys look at every single budget account that comes up here, you'll usually see a cost associated with SWICAP and repayment of SWICAP for virtually every budget account that has anything other than just general funds in it. And so the purpose of SWICAP is to reimburse the general fund from non-general fund sources. And so when doing these projects, we thought it would be convenient to not reinvent the wheel and use the processes already in place for the EATS projects to reimburse the general fund for these projects. And so it would we decided to go along this path because it would effectively reduce the difficulty in budgeting and having to budget a separate general fund loan with a separate repayment schedule, requiring staff hours to manage that and to monitor that, as well as it would tie the repayment to the useful life of these of these improvements. So oftentimes what we've seen when we've done general fund loans as opposed to utilizing the repayment structure through depreciation and SWICAP is that the repayment plan is somewhat arbitrary in nature as opposed to tied to the useful life of these improvements. And so this would effectively reduce the ability or the necessity to track this separately on a staff level and tie back the repayment to the general fund obligation from EATS into the actual useful life of these improvements.
Thank you very much. That helps answer that question. And I had another one, but you wound it into that one, so we don't need one. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. LaFever. And I'm sorry to throw you off. We kind of just took that break, so I was like, we might as well do admin. So go ahead with the Department of Health and Human Services. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Kent LaFever for the record. So we could skip ahead to the slide 54. And this is the Health and Human Services projects. So today we'll present 3 projects for HHS, 23C27, 23MO2, and 23PO6. This is an aerial or a map shot of the gymnasium for the Summit View Youth Center. It's located generally at the I-15 and 215 interchange in North Las Vegas. This project will construct an additional multipurpose room and a restroom and replace the athletic flooring, lighting, and bleachers, and install some CCTV as well as some new insulation for that building. This project is slated at $4.5 million and will be 100% state funded. Next, I'd like to draw your attention to slide 57, which is the combined maintenance project for HHS called 23MO2. And as Mr. Walker mentioned, some of the benefits that we've realized from the past experience in 21MO2, I'll summarize those as follows. We'll see additional cost savings right out of the gate by combining these projects. We save $1.4 million just in the contingency alone over regular projects if they were funded individually. Improved utilization of CIP funding. We would be able to direct agency benefits by reducing system failures, minimizing program disruptions, and long-term repairs implemented. I'd also like to say that in the last 2 years, since we implemented 21MO2, we have not had a system failure at a HHS building, to my knowledge. This will also decrease impacts to operations, as projects at the same location would be better consolidated. So I'll give you a rundown on each one of these projects, just a brief overview really. MO2-1 is the HVAC replacement for the Desert Willow Treatment Center. And so HVAC is a industry term that means mechanical stuff that keeps people warm and cold. MO2-2 is anti-ligature rehabilitation at Ross-O'Neill Psychiatric Hospital. The Ross-O'Neill Psychiatric Hospital houses both forensic and civil patients, and the forensic psychiatric clients require a level of security appropriate to a detention facility. MO2-3 is the Adolescent Treatment Center for rooftop multi-zone unit replacements. That's another big fancy word for mechanical stuff that keeps you warm and keeps you cool. MO2-4, anti-ligature rehabilitation at Stein Hospital. Again, this is for forensic clients who have a level of security appropriate to a detention facility. MO2-5, secure area door replacement at Lakes Crossing. The existing doors in the secure area of Lakes Crossing have required continuous maintenance over the life of the building due to ongoing damage, mostly by clients. The existing door has exceeded their useful life with separating seams, the doors falling apart, warped forms, and bent hardware. MO2-6 is the emergency generator replacement for Summit View Youth Center. The existing generator is 22 years old and past its useful life. MO2-7 is the elevator replacement for Stein Hospital. Due to the age and the age of the equipment, repairs have become increasingly common, and it is increasingly difficult to find parts for these elevators. MO2-8 is installation of security cameras at Southern Nevada Child and Adolescent Services. Camera footage will not only assist in determining if there are criminal investigations within the facility, but also for employee protection. MO2-9, security fencing at Desert Regional Center. And this is also, this fence is to keep clients in and to keep transients out. Continuing, MO2-10 is the exhaust fan replacement for the Nevada Youth Training Center in Elko. Another one of those fancy mechanical HVAC things. And then HVAC, domestic water replacement at Lakes Crossing. This equipment is approximately 23 years old and past its service life. And then at the NYTC, Nevada Youth Training Center in Elko, replacing the gym floor. Currently, the existing floor is deteriorating and needs to be replaced. MO2-13 is the shower room replacement at Lakes Crossing. And MO2-14 is the upgraded surveillance cameras and access controls for the Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services. The total project rolled up is $37.8 million and is 100% state funded. I will also add that this will operate similar to the MO2 that we've experienced with the 21 MO2, whereas savings can be applied directly to the next projects, Priority 1 and Priority 2 projects, as they are realized. Are there any questions on 23 MO2?
Let's go with Speaker Yeager.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I heard you talk a little bit about what I think were the benefits of the implementation of the consolidated deferred maintenance project approach that we approved in the 21 session. If you could just reiterate what a couple of those benefits were, and then have we had any problems with that approach that the committee should be aware of?
Thank you for the question. The benefits have been reported quarterly to this body in our quarterly reports. And so in 21 MO2, we've already realized as of today, or I should say as of the last quarter, $198,000 in savings. And where that savings comes from is from being able to, for example, save money on architectural and engineering fees. And then most of this 198, not all of it, but most of it, came from the Caliente Youth Center flooring replacement, where we had actual construction savings. And that project is finished now, and it's been well received by not only the facility, but by the community in Caliente. We also are tracking, and we report this quarterly, we are also tracking $1.4 million worth of potential savings on MO2. They haven't been fully realized yet because we have a lot of projects in MO2 out for construction right now. But as those projects finish, we'll be able to firm that number up. But it's exciting to me to see that we're actually saving money on top of combining these projects, which saved money in the initial ask. 21 MO2 saved roughly $1 million just in combining these projects into a contingency pool that's shared. And so here we are saving another 1.5, hopefully. I'm pretty confident we're going to do it by the end of this project. Now, right now, we're kind of in the middle of the project. It's still got 2 more years of funding window. But I'm happy to report that pretty much every one of these projects are out to bid, or they're under construction right now. So I hope that answered your question.
It did, thank you. Could I have a follow-up, Chair? And you had mentioned the 2021 or excuse me, the 21 MO2 and the projects and the savings. And so in looking at the 21 list of priority projects for HHS and then looking forward to what we have in front of us, it looks like some of the priority 2 projects from 2021 were not automatically advanced or increased to priority 1. And so I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the State Public Works Division prioritizes those projects from one biennium to the next, and if there are specific considerations that go into making the decision about whether to upgrade something from a priority 2 to a priority 1, or whether it stays there in favor of something else.
Kent Lefevre for the record, thank you for that question. We've got a little white paper on that, so. Some of the projects that were in priority 2 for the 21 MO2 became agency projects during the past during the past year or so. And so that took 2 or 3, I think 3 projects off of the table for the priority 2s because the agency wanted to get them done, and I believe those are probably ARPA funded projects. And then so that takes those out of contingency. We are the first priority on the priority 2s for the 21. We have already entered into contracts for that, for design and professional services. And so there are a couple of other projects on that list that didn't move forward, and I think the reason for that is because of the priorities of the facility. There are more emergent needs in the priority 1s that we represented here in this hearing than they were 2 years ago. So it's not that those projects aren't important, but they got eclipsed by more important projects.
Thank you for that response. And Madam Chair, could I ask one more, please? This will be the last one, I think. So just given that, curious if, is there a backlog of deferred maintenance projects for the Department of Health and Human Services? And if there is, if you could indicate what types of project and the estimated cost to complete whatever the backlog is, please.
Kent Lefevre for the record. Thank you for the question. The backlog is represented in the priority 2 tiers. So we have flooring replacement, patio wall caps for one of the facilities, perimeter security fences, ceiling replacements, electrical and communications replacements, electrical upgrades, kitchen and flooring replacements. So the total of those is $13.5 million. So we continue to monitor those, and we're not going to forget about them, nor is the agency going to let us forget about them, because believe it or not, in 12 months from now is when the agencies bring their new projects for the 23 or the 25 CIP to our attention. So.
And I think now we're still within the Department of Health and Human Services, but P06, I think that's like 89 of your slide.
Yep. Slide 89. If everybody's there, I'll start. So this project is an advanced planning project for the Southern Nevada Forensics Facility of HHS, Health and Human Services. This project is proposed to be located on the West Charleston campus. And next slide. The scope of this project is advanced planning through construction documents, for the facility to serve individuals awaiting adjudication. It is intended, when fully built out, to accommodate 282 beds to meet the anticipated need of the facility, of the agency. It is anticipated that construction for this project will be requested in the 2025 Capital Improvement Program. This total planning project is $18.2 million and is 100% state funded. I'll pause for any questions on that project.
Thank you. We'll go to Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions, if I may. My first is if this future construction of the Southern Nevada Forensic Facility is approved, would the existing Lakes Crossings and Stein facilities in northern and southern Nevada continue to be needed and used for forensic services?
Thank you for the question. I'll have the agency come forward and answer that.
Good morning, Lisa Sherrick, Administrator for the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. Yes.
Okay, and forever, like, are they intended to continue to be used for forensic services in perpetuity?
Lisa Sherrick for the record. As long as the facilities will remain standing and operational, I do foresee needing to use those. Our capacity issues are at a point that we really need to seriously consider this in Nevada. It's been a long time coming, and I think now is the opportunity to look at getting that new hospital planned and built out in the next couple years, just due to the length of time also Stein and Lakes Crossing has been around, and the number of renovations that need to occur on an ongoing basis.
Joe Millay, for the record, I wanted to add a little addendum to that. In our master plan, eventually, Stein Hospital will have outlived its useful life. Currently, we need to utilize that for the beds needed, but eventually, yes, that will close.
Thank you for that. I assume we have access to the master plan, and I can ask staff to follow up with that. I have one other question, Chair, if I may. Thank you so much. Can you talk about how the number of beds allocated to short-term clients and long-term clients will be determined in each phase of the construction of the new facility?
Lisa Sherrick for the record. So currently, the individuals that we serve for restoration, they do come into our services for about 90 to 120 days for that restoration piece. And then we have the long-term committed individuals, which I think you're talking about the long and short-term with those two differences. Currently, we have 31 that are inpatient, and those do then take off 31 beds for the year for up to 10 years, or by each individual person. So our plan is to do a phased approach for the new, if the new hospital is approved, and work our way up with the patients as well as the staffing, the correlating staffing.
So to clarify, if I may, it will be the determination of allocation to short and long-term clients will be based on the need at the time of the phase, or is it built into the phased products? I'm sorry, maybe I missed that part.
Lisa Sherrick for the record. So perhaps to first clarify, we actually don't, the division does not, we're not the ones that decide whether a person is going to be served long-term or short. Long-term committed individuals are committed by the courts to us, and that is outside of our decision-making process for that. For the individuals that come to our services for the restoration piece, it does take about 90 to 120 days per person. Some people might take a little bit longer, but it's really based on their treatment needs and being able to do all of the evaluations required to determine if they're competent to stand trial. I hope that answered your question better.
That certainly helps.
Okay.
I have one more clarifying question. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Are these combined populations short and long term, or do you have them in separate areas of the facilities?
Lisa Sherrick for the record. It depends. We have had them combined. We have had them had the individuals in a separate unit. But with the growing long-term committed individuals that we have seen, that does become more challenging to do that. And I do want to add, I think it's important, since FY18, we have had a 94% increase in those long-term committed individuals.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll go to Majority Leader Howdicke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a quick question regarding the cost of the advanced planning. You did say that that was going to be 100% state funded, correct?
Kent LaFever for the record. Yes, 100% state funded.
And you would be back in the next biennium to request funding for the total cost of the construction. Could you let us know how much total cost of the construction will be and if that will be 100% state funded?
Kent LaFever for the record. Yes, we will anticipate coming back to ask for the construction dollars in '25. The estimate is, what is it? I want to say it's around $270 million for the facility.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just follow up, Madam Chair, it's concerning to me because you're not the only department who's coming and asking for advanced planning dollars, and it blows my mind how costly these are, these planning dollars, and they're all about $20 million. And assuming all the from what I've seen, all of the construction project costs are going to be the same. I don't know if we'll be able to fund every single project that comes and requests to be funded. And if that's the case, you're right, we are advanced funding these planning projects that might not get constructed for another 4 or 6 years. So can you tell me a little bit about what goes into that advanced planning for your project? It's almost $20 million. And again, we don't know if we'll have the money to fund the construction in the next biennium. So would this advanced planning project hold for, I guess, a couple bienniums?
Thank you for the question, Kent LaFever for the record. The planning on these particular projects is very intense. I mean, we're talking about blending a hospital with a prison. And so the consultant team that will be brought to bear on this particular design will include architects and engineers of every variety. It will include environmental engineers, acousticians, and it's not uncommon to have 20 or 30 consultants on a project of this size, especially given the complex nature of these buildings.
And just one last question, because when my colleague was asking the previous questions, it was mentioned that in the future the Stein Forensic Facility would be closing. So was there any thought given to the remodeling of the Stein Forensic Facility instead of constructing a brand new facility?
Kent LaFever for the record. We're already doing a modest remodel in those facilities right now to give more beds to the facility for this purpose.
And Mr. LaFever, we're going to turn back. Oh, okay, we have one more question on this, and then we're going to go back to a question on MO2. We have Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, this will not be a unique building. Other states have done it, other developers have done it. Have you looked at plans that are already existing that maybe you could retrofit for the state of Nevada that combines medical with the prison style? Have you thought about that and maybe at a cost savings?
Thank you for the question. Kent Lefevre for the record. Typically, buildings like this, although there are other prototypes out there, this is a unique building on a unique site. We're not only challenged by geography on this site, but circulation, parking, ingress, egress, and the actual functioning of the building. So while the design team that we select will have experience in other types of projects of this magnitude, I see this as a individual project. We won't be able to cut and paste this one.
Just a follow-up, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. And then the $276.6 million that you'll be asking for next biennium, will that all be state-funded dollars, or will there be other funding sources for that build-out?
Kent Lefevre for the record. Typically, the HHS projects are 100% state-funded.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we're going to turn back to MO2, and we have a follow-up question from Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know I said it was my last question. I came up with another one, so sorry to backtrack on us. I just wanted to ask about MO212, the gymnasium floor replacement at the Nevada Youth Training Center, at the cost of about $1.7 million. And so just a two-part question. One, could you speak to what the average population is for folks that are at the Nevada Youth Training Center? And then if you could just give a bit of an update on why that upgrade is needed. From looking at the backup, it looks like there is some sort of gym there, so just want to get a sense of the urgency of that and the benefits that we might see from it.
Thank you for the question. Do we have a representative from Summit View?
Good morning, Melanie Young, Deputy Administrator for the Division of Child and Family Services. I want to make sure I answer your question correctly. Could you please restate?
Yes, of course. Thank you. So it was a two-part question, and one was just what the average population is at the Nevada Youth Training Center. And obviously, I know that can fluctuate, but just trying to get a sense, are we talking 25 youth? Are we talking 150? And then if you could just speak to the current condition of the gymnasium and why the upgrades are needed.
Thank you, Melanie Young, Deputy Administrator for the record. The facility, I don't have the current population off the top of my head with me, but would be more than happy to provide that to you, so don't want to state anything incorrectly. But the status of the floor right now, it's pretty dangerous for the youth to be in there. Slips, falls are a concern. And so with the facility currently, they use it mostly during this time of year when the weather is not prohibitive for them to be outside getting physical activity. They're also wanting to include like basketball, intramural sports, and things like that that they're not able to do right now. So hopefully that answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're ready to turn to Department of Public Safety.
Okay, if you're following along, we're at slide 91 for the Department of Public Safety. Kent Lefevre for the record. On slide 93 is the rendering for the Department of Public Safety building that's going to be located on the South Carson Street, approximately Colorado and South Carson. So this is an artist's rendering of what the facility would look like from the Carson Street side. Next, I'd like to take a minute and go through this floor plan, which has been developed by our consultant. And it shows the extent of the property between Colorado and Carson on the left and going to the south. This is the old National Guard site And what we call in the architectural world, we call this a brown site because it's not virgin land, but it's going to be repurposed for a new building. The building's situated on the site, as you can see, with some parking, structured parking on the left, and then that kind of H shape is the proposed building footprint. This project is surrounded by residential on the east and on the north, and commercial property on the south. This project will complete the advanced planning from schematic design through construction documents as a continuation of 21 PO4. You'll recall last session, 21 PO4 was funded just for planning only. So we did a programming exercise with that funding. This project would include roughly 162,000 square feet of building with a 550 square foot parking structure and connecting bridge. Rooftop solar voltaics will be employed, as well as a fitness center to consolidate the department headquarters and construct a state forensics testing facility. It is anticipated, if this project is approved, it is anticipated that construction funding will be requested in the 2025 CIP. And I'll pause for any questions you may have on that.
Thank you so much. We'll start with Assemblyman Miller.
Thank you, Chair. So my first question here is about the forensic testing lab portion of the building. Does the department currently have a backlog of criminal forensic testing, given the increased demand for these services? I understand that we are looking to have this lab here in the state because we are either using the Washoe lab or the Metro lab or sending stuff outside of the state. So you could share with us about that, please.
Thank you for the question. I'll have an agency representative answer that one.
Good morning. Curtis Palmer, ASO4 for the Department of Public Safety, for the record. I did a poll of our different agencies within the department, and at this point they're not reporting any backlog per se of lab testing. However, there are significant delays in getting the reports back in a timely manner in the process of law. So,
Chair, may I continue? I have a couple questions. Okay. So you said there's no backlog currently, but there's significant delay. What's the delay time? What does that look like?
Curtis Palmer for the record. In the responses that I had back, there are delays of up to 4 to 5 months, depending on the type and the situation. For something that is a high-profile crime, the lab results tend to come back a little bit faster, but others that are lower priority tend to be more delayed. We are a small percentage of business for the labs themselves, and so we just don't warrant the priority that we would like to see.
So just for my understanding, when you say 4 or 5 months for some and some are shorter, what's the amount of time that it should take for to get the forensic back?
Again, Curtis Palmer for the record. That is difficult to say because each situation is a little bit unique. If we're looking for fingerprints or forensics of that sort, that may be a lower priority than say something that is a high-profile murder case, and so it really depends. A majority of the work is probably in the blood samples and so forth that are taken for DUIs and so forth, and that can range anywhere from 20 to 40 days, is my understanding. should be ideally less, 10 days or so. It does have an impact on court filings and so forth when we're still waiting for results to come back on whether we're filing charges or not.
Thank you. So we're looking at things that should take 40 to 50 days, taking 4 to 5 months, and we could eliminate that with having the lab.
Curtis Palmer, for the record, that is my understanding from the report from the divisions. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you. So when we look at that, now I also heard you mention that it's a small amount of the work for these other labs that we're actually sending to them. So I understand that you're also looking at adding the cannabis quality control testing through this facility as well, right?
Curtis Palmer, for the record. Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, can you explain why the State Forensics Lab would be the proper venue to conduct quality control testing for recreational and medical marijuana, cannabis is the appropriate term, as opposed to having this as a function of the Department of Agriculture?
Again, Curtis Palmer, for the record. I'm afraid I'm going to have to punt this to our Deputy Director, Sherry Brueggemann, who is online at the moment.
Hello, this is Sherry Brueggemann, Deputy Director for the Department of Public Safety. And in reference to the question regarding cannabis, the thought process is basically right now, if the cannabis independent recreational or retail operations are selling their products, they verify that testing by whatever testing lab they choose. There's no standards for testing in any of the retail outlets for cannabis right now. And so they can choose whoever's going to give them the best result. So the purpose of this, making it a state forensic lab, will allow us to test all of those things and implement a standard for testing for anything else. So we just felt, the department felt, the cannabis board felt that it was time that we start setting standards so that they would be consistent throughout the state. And this would be the perfect place to do that.
Okay, thank you. And so would that then require all of the testing to go through the state lab versus the private labs? Is that what we're looking at?
The state lab could be utilized in the beginning for the purposes of testing by the cannabis investigators. So they could go into the retail markets, select items that have the labels for X amount of whatever is in it, bring it back to our lab. We could test it and compare to what their labels are saying. So our lab would not be for the retailer's use necessarily. It could be later on, but at this point, we'd really be looking at validating their results.
Okay, thank you. And we think this is better set with DPS versus the Department of Agriculture. Yes.
Yes, at this time, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one more question, Chair. So when we're looking at this and we're looking at the funding in the planning project, it looks like we've got, my understanding is 1/3 coming from the highway fund and 2/3 coming from the general fund split for this planning project. How was that determined?
Sherry Brueggemann, for the record. The split has been changing as we've developed our program and developed the area. Originally, it was split on the FTEs that it would house. So normally, X amount of highway fund FTEs are the law enforcement officers with highway patrol. And then the other big balance is the FTEs with parole and probation. But parole and probation will probably require more actual office space than our law enforcement officers, who obviously work mostly out of their cars. So as we went through that exercise and developed the garage and a number of shared locations with regard to the lab, the mechanic area, we were able to see that highway fund was going to take a larger portion of the funding than we thought. And so we're looking at it being close to a 50-50 split between highway fund and general fund right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Next, we will go on to Majority Leader Howdigi.
Thank you, and that was a perfect segue. I think I just want to make sure I caught that right. Did you say the construction cost was going to be half highway fund and half general fund, the entire project?
That is my understanding that that's where we are headed to. Yes. I'm sorry, Sherry Brigham for the record.
Okay, thank you, and administrator and team. I'm going to be very consistent with my questions. So, same thing. I mean, the planning of this project is close to $20 million. And again, if we look at both projects combined, I feel a little bit better knowing that half of the total construction cost for this project is going to be highway fund funded, because from the information I have, it's about a $325 million project. So if we look at the previous request and this request, that's over $600 million that we are talking about just with these two projects alone, not including any other projects that are coming our way, which would probably put us close to $1 billion. I don't know how likely that is that we'll be able to fund all of the projects in the next biennium, which is where my worry comes in being good stewards of our dollars and pre-funding these advanced planning projects, which are about $20 million each, if we aren't planning on fully funding the construction projects in the next biennium. So the advanced planning project for this headquarters in Carson City is, again, about $20 million. Is that going to be 100% general fund funded?
Kent Lefevre for the record. For the presentation in our CIP request, the GovRec, it is a 33% highway funded project and 67% state funded.
Okay, and then again, just to confirm, the $325 million, you're saying that you will only come back in 2025 and request 50% of that be general fund funded and the other 50% will be highway fund funded?
That I can't confirm at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we will go to Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's kind of along the same line of questioning. For the forensic lab, so the cannabis facilities are privately testing. So why aren't we trying to roll in some of the cannabis dollars that they're using for the private testing in order to either create a fee structure or something that breaks this general fund portion down, because that is another source of money, and I don't understand why that has not been examined.
Sherry Brigham for the record. That most certainly has been examined. We fully intend to do exactly that. It is intended that once the lab is up and running, that the cannabis funding will be supporting it and through an MOU, and the funding will come into the lab, and we see a payoff of that lab very, very quickly.
Madam Chair, follow-up. So if it's been examined, how much funding or the fee structure that are you anticipating or looking at or thinking about? Because it would be good to have that on the record, especially if you believe that that money will pay off the lab sooner than later. Can you add information?
Curtis, do you have the study information that was done that gave us a timeline?
Curtis Palmer for the record. We have looked into some studies and some timelines of putting that together and so forth. Unfortunately, I do not have that with me at the current time.
Thank you, Madam
Sherry
Chair.
Brigham for the record. We will be happy to get back to you on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to that timeline. If we'll go to Assemblywoman Monroe Marino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just had a few questions. Could you let us know what the cost is? We're using private labs right now to do the testing. What would be the cost savings? And in our backup notes, it says that if this lab is built out in the new building, the local law enforcement agencies would have a contract with the state lab. Have you already been in conversations with local law enforcement agencies? A lot of them have their own labs. Would they actually make contracts? And what would that revenue be from those contracts? Sorry, I know that's a lot of questions.
No, I understand. Sherry Brigham for the record. No, the intent is not to necessarily contract with the local law enforcement agencies up until public safety, state police needs, and fully handling the needs of the cannabis board. But what we do foresee happening is that we will have, the way we have designed it, a section on every type of forensic evidence testing there is. And there may come a time where a local law enforcement agency, just by the nature of their case, may not have the ability to test as quickly, or sometimes they just don't have the facility, and they themselves have to send outside the state for that information. Then we would set up MOUs to handle that information. We don't want to close the doors to any opportunity of sharing information or sharing resources with local law enforcement, but we don't expect that to really happen until we are at 100% handling everything that we need and the cannabis board needs as well.
Follow up, Madam Chair. Thank you for that answer. If we're able to, and I share the concerns of my colleague, there's a lot in this budget presentation. If we were able to build out this lab, do we have the expertise, manpower in the state to run the lab, or would we have to start looking for folks just to, once we get it up and running, have that staff that's there? And is that staff here in state currently?
Sherry Brigham for the record. I am unaware that the staff are here currently. We would have to hire staff. We had to use an expert designer for the lab that is contracted through, or I'm saying that wrong. He was contracted as part of the design, and he has built labs and hired people for those labs and have gone all the way through the whole process. So as part of our next process, we would be in contact with him to help us design job descriptions, pay structures, etc. Then if we were approved to build, we would start looking for those positions, specifically a lab director, to be on board by the time we start the building, so that he would supervise the lab and the building, and then bringing on the additional technicians that he would need during the whole process. We would expect most of them, hopefully, to come from Nevada, but we can't exclude the fact that there may not be someone available or willing to come work for the state.
And my last question, Madam Chair, if I can, what is the anticipated number of FTEs you would actually need? Or do you know that yet?
We do. Sherry Brigham for the record. We do know that. I am going to ask Brian, do you have that information? I know Adriana would, but I don't have it at my fingertips. It's not 10, it's like 5. If I recall correctly.
Curtis Palmer for the record. We did do an org chart and presented that, and I believe between the cannabis and the DPS side of things, we were looking at 15 to 18 is what sticks in my head, but we could certainly provide that org chart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you. And I did have a follow-up because it does sound like design has already started. Because then the amount is through the construction documents. Have we like already completed like a schematic design, or what stage has been completed to date?
Kent Lefevre for the record. The stage of the drawings are programming, which is the very first step on design. It's even before schematic design. That's what we were approved for in the 21 legislature, and we have completed that effort, and we're ready to launch into schematic design and the full design process.
And
But no design beyond programming has occurred.
And I apologize, I wasn't here in the 21-20 session. So was that paid for and split by the highway funds as well as state funds, or do you recall how that was funded?
I recall that there was a split. I'm not sure what the amount was.
Thank you so much. I think that's it on the questions for that. If you want to move on to the Office of the Military, that'd be appreciated.
Thank you. Kent Lefevre for the record. We'll skip to slide 96 for those of you following along. And I will turn the mic over to Kirsten Nally to present the military projects.
Kirsten Nally for the record. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. In order to orient you to the location of this project, CO4, Remodel Army Aviation Support Facility, is located at the west of the Reno Stead Airport at the Harry Reid Training Center. This project will provide an interior remodel to meet the mission of the facility, remodel and provide new women's locker rooms, and will update architectural finishes throughout portions of the facility. The project budget is $3.4 million and is funded with federal and state funding. Project CO9, Ground Support Equipment Shop, is also located at the Harry Reid Training Center. This project will design and construct a 3,200 square foot conditioned ground support equipment shop, which will include 320 square feet of heated interior space for maintenance. The project budget is $2 million and is state funded. The location of C11 physical training facilities is in North Las Vegas at the Floyd Edsel Training Center. The project will design and construct a physical training facilities area, including restroom facilities and utilities. The project budget is $3.8 million and is state funded. Field Maintenance Shop 1 remodel is also located at the Floyd Edsel Training Center. This project will construct locker room space that includes showers, restrooms, break rooms, classrooms, offices, and storage areas. The project budget is $7.8 million and is state funded. Project C33 Southern Nevada Small Arms Range is located on the east side of Las Vegas. This project will design and construct a small arms range consisting of a 4-lane rifle and pistol target range. The project will also include a control tower, restrooms, classroom, ammunition breakdown building, lead recovery system, operations and storage building, covered pad with bleachers, parking area, and access to existing roads. The project budget is $17 million and is state funded. The Nevada Office of the Military has 3 maintenance projects in the CIP book. I will present these each briefly, and if the committee needs further detail, we can go over each of these individually. M18 will replace HVAC equipment at the Combined Support Maintenance Shop in Carson City. M21 will construct an alternate drainage method on the site of the Las Vegas Readiness Center, and M47 will replace HVAC equipment at the Emergency Operations Center in Carson City. I'll pause here for questions.
And my question pertains to CP 23C11, the physical training facilities at the Floyd Etzel Training Center. I had read it, and this may not be the right one, where training was already being conducted out of state. Is this the one, or is that another one?
We'll invite the agency up to answer that one.
Good morning. Clayton Chappell, Nevada Army National Guard. I'm the Director of Installations and Environment. You are thinking of the small arms range. That's the activities that are being done out of state. The physical fitness is being done in state, but the Army has changed the program, and we are updating our facilities to address those shortfalls we currently have in the state.
Perfect. You may be also the person for the question, because my question is going to be on the training facility, though. Where is the physical training currently conducted then for the students and soldiers stationed at the Floyd Etzel Training Center?
Clayton Chappell, once again for the record, Madam Chair. So the original Army physical fitness test was done throughout the state. It was push-ups, sit-ups, and running. The new one, the new test, the Army Combat Fitness Test, has 6 elements in it, and we are currently rolling out turf, doing it under an awning, and trying to. We're not trying. We are meeting the requirements. We're just making this a more permanent facility.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Next, I have a question from Assemblywoman Danielle Marino regarding the CIP 23-C33.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few questions. So the 17 million would be state general obligation bonds to build out the range?
Kent LaFever for the record, yes, that is correct. These are state funds.
And then, Madam Chair, thank you. The land, there's 25 acres of land that this would be built on, and that's currently Clark County land, and that would be a lease. Is there an amount for that lease, or there's no charge for that lease? We're just entering into a no-charge agreement.
Once again, for the record, Clayton Chappell, Nevada Army National Guard, Madam Chair, through you to the Assemblywoman. We're entering into a lease. The plan and the projection is a no dollar lease.
So we'll keep our fingers crossed. I like no dollars. That's really good. And then could you explain the immediate need to fund the Southern Nevada Small Arms Range? I think you said earlier we're sending our members out of state. What's that annual cost? How often do they go out of state? And would anyone else be able to use the range other than the Guard?
Madam Chair, Clayton Chappell Madam Chair, through you to the Assemblywoman, Clayton Chappell once again. We, on an annual basis, are sending soldiers outside the state to qualify on a small arms range. I can get into additional detail, but I will turn the time over to Major General Barry, who will eloquently answer these questions.
For the record, Major General Barry, Nevada National Guard. I was going to bring up Colonel Compton to answer these questions, who's our range expert. But I will tell you that in the history of the Nevada Army National Guard, we have not had our own range facility. Just recently, I think 3 years ago, the Army changed the requirements, mandatory requirements of how we had to qualify. And whether we're borrowing range time from Nellis or Hawthorne or sending our people out of state, it's been a huge cost for us. And I'll just say from a liability standpoint, we at times could have people who may be unqualified that could be called on a moment's notice to respond to something in state or federally. So we're looking at this opportunity to get a range. So it would be more convenient. The majority of our personnel in the Nevada National Guard are down south. And so to send them away, just from a readiness standpoint, the cost in days to get on a bus and go out of state, they miss their requirements of regular readiness training. And if you're at what's called a M-Day or traditional guardsman and you're only working 2 days a month, that's a huge time on their energy in terms of the ability to spend it other places maintaining their requirements for readiness. And so one of the big asks for us is to make sure that we could have a facility that not only that our guardsmen could qualify on, that we could also provide for other state agencies to include the Department of Corrections or the Department of Public Safety, or also our Nevada Air Guardsmen that are down south working off of Nellis Air Force Base.
Thank you, Manager. May I ask another? Thank you for, you answered one of the questions I was going to ask, if other state agencies would be able to utilize the range. Can you tell us why this request wasn't part of the requested CIPs in the original request for the 2023 budget?
I'll turn that over to Mr. Clayton Chapel.
Madam Chair, through you to the Assemblywoman, this is Clayton Chappell, Director of Installations, Nevada Army National Guard. We originally had in the CIP request a range. However, it was in northern Nevada. It was on federal land. That was subsequently removed from the CIP request. In the meantime, our ASO was requesting this range because we had missed the cutoff for the CIP. So it went through a different route.
Thank you so much. And I just have one last question, Madam Chair. In the last few years, we've seen a lot of things happening in our country, and our reserve and things have had to be sent out to help in other states. If we were able to approve this, would this help make sure that our members are ready to respond to any emergency throughout the country in a more timely manner, and that they're up to standard and up to par, that their qualifications are intact instead of sending them out of state? Would it just help us be better prepared for Nevada's reserve members to respond to national emergencies?
Madam Chair, through you to the Assemblywoman Clayton Chappell once again. Outstanding question. Yes, ma'am. We would be able to quickly, like January 6th, when we were called up or on a tentative basis to be prepared, we were scrambling around to try to find ranges so we could get our soldiers ready in that aspect on their weapons. So yes, this would definitely help in our overall readiness of our soldiers.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And then we do have one follow-up on this. Do you know who owns the land that this is planned to be constructed on?
It's Clark County right now. The Metro is using the area that we're looking at leasing from, or leasing with them, working with them.
Thank you so much. And we're ready to, I don't think we have any other further questions, and we're ready to move to the Department of Veterans Services. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kent Lefevre, for the record. So on the slideshow, we'll go to slide 114, the Department of Veterans Services. And I will present the veteran service projects, and then we'll open it up for questions. The first slide on 115 is the remodel and addition of Southern Nevada Veterans Home. And this is the Veterans Home in Boulder City. This map shows the facility location. It's kind of on the west side of Boulder City as you come into town. This particular slide is the proposed addition and remodel to the veterans facility, and I will describe this slide by color. The light gray portion represents the outline of the existing facility as it currently stands. The orange colored elements represent the additions to the building. The green colored elements are open courtyards, and the dark gray is site improvements. This project will include the remodeling of bathrooms, bedrooms, enhance the neighborhood community and town center concepts. Central dining will be improved. Staff work areas will be improved. Nurse stations, construction will include additional rooms and common areas, parking reconfigurations and entrance redesign, and perimeter fence and forest protection improvements. Moving on to C13 is the committal building for Northern Nevada Veterans Memorial Cemetery in Fernley. And this is located just on the north side of the freeway, I-80 at Fernley. This project will design and construct a committal building that will include restrooms, storage, and parking areas. The project is necessary in order to provide a more fully enclosed alternative for memorials and interments services in this cemetery. Next is C32, which is the storage building installation at the Northern Nevada Veterans Home. This will be located kind of on the back side of the facility. If you're familiar with the facility, it'll be on the back service side of the facility. This project is slated at $2 million and is 100% state funded. And then on slide 122 is a summary of maintenance projects for veteran services, including a walk-in cooler and freezer replacement. M09, M11 is replacement of cooling tower piers, and M15 is a chapel remodel at the cemetery in Boulder City. Also, on slide 129, we'll skip forward to that PO4, advanced planning of the Northern Nevada Veterans Home. This facility is going to be located on the north side of Las Vegas, next to the Beltway in Pecos. It will be joining the campus of the Veterans healthcare system that's already there. And this project will do the advanced planning through construction documents of a 128-bed, 120,000 square foot facility, providing skilled nursing for the Veterans Affairs campus in North Las Vegas. The land would be donated through a transfer to state ownership, and we will be using the small house concept for creating a residential atmosphere within the facility. And I believe that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. We will start with Senator Dondero Liu.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. One of the questions I have is, can you give us some more information, some additional information about the Department of Veterans Services, your plan to address the loss of 60 beds in the Southern Nevada State Veterans Home as a result of moving from a double to a single occupancy layout if that project's completed?
Thank you for the question. I'll have a representative from the Veterans Administration come forward.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Director Wager, for the record, from you to the Senator. Thank you for the question, ma'am. As you can see by the totality of the projects we have, we're moving from the primary reason for all of this is to get to single bed facility or single room facilities. And so while we are decreasing the number of beds at the Southern Nevada State Veterans Home in Boulder City, we would, if the other project is approved along with this for the North Las Vegas State Veterans Home, on the VA campus, we'd actually increase the number of rooms from 180 beds that we currently have to 248 beds overall.
Okay, thank you. I do remember when we heard the budget thinking that we were losing rooms, so they would just be transferred from Boulder City basically to North Las Vegas.
Director Wager, for the record, through the chair to you, Senator, exactly. We would actually have more rooms in the end, and they'd all be single occupancy rooms for the safety of our residents.
Thank you very much. And a follow-up, Madam Chair? So that cost of the $64 million to be funded for the construction project, if the Department of Veteran Services application for federal funds from the State Veterans Home is not approved, how does that work?
Director Wager, for the record, I can tell you that we've never had a situation where the VA did not fund their portion. And so we have to get the state dollars approved first before we can actually get on the priority list for the Veterans Affairs to provide their dollars. But we've never had a case where they have not provided that.
So it's not a match, it's just you have to be approved in the state.
Director Wager, for the record, exactly. We have to be approved by the state first before the VA will put us on their priority list.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
I also had a just kind of follow-up question, because I see that we're moving from the 2 beds to 1 bed. And we just got done with the pandemic, so I wasn't sure if that was the reasoning or what the reasoning was behind going from the 2 beds in a room to 1 bed in a room.
Director Wager, for the record, thank you for the question, Madam Chair. The pandemic has a lot to do with this. We did find that, especially with the fact that our double occupancy rooms share a bathroom with another double occupancy room, we're having 4 veterans who already have comorbid conditions sharing 1 bathroom. And so it's more than just a double occupancy room problem. It's just the fact that we need to keep our residents safe. And the pandemic did show us that this was really needed. I do want to add to that when we have somebody who's positive for COVID or whatever pandemic we're going to go through next, we have to use rooms in a special area and move them there. In the case of the Northern Nevada State Veterans Home, they all have their own rooms, and so we can quarantine them in their rooms. We can't do that at the Southern Home.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then I have a follow-up from Majority Leader Howdicke.
And I actually had a couple questions, but your questions just triggered one on this specific budget. So I know you had mentioned that we're just transferring the beds, but from the information I had read, we're actually still going to be in a deficit. So can you talk to us a little bit about the need? I know I was mortified when I read that we had 4 residents sharing a bathroom, right? Not just for their safety and for multiple reasons. So I'm happy with the request and that we're moving down to the single occupancy. But I know you had mentioned we're losing those 60 beds, but the plan is to open the North Las Vegas facility, which would transfer the beds there. But that's not going to be sufficient beds for the needs in our state. Can you talk to me about what that wait list looks like for our state? If all of these plans are approved, how many beds would we still need in our state to meet the needs of our veterans?
Director Wager, for the record, through the chair to you, Assemblywoman. The Department of Veterans Affairs, under 38 CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, shows the maximum number of beds for Nevada would be ideal at 694. Currently we have 96 rooms and 180, so 87.5% of those are double occupancy. And so with this, the Northern Home is at 96 rooms and single occupancy, 96 beds. And that's a total of 276 beds. And that indicates we are at a deficit of 373, if you want to use the word deficit, overall. With this change, the Southern Nevada State Veterans Home would be 120 beds in 120 rooms. The northern facility would still stay at 96 rooms, 96 beds. And then the increase would be in the North Las Vegas State Veterans Home of 128 beds. And that's increasing our total bed capacity to 344. This would show that we still haven't met the maximum number of beds that the VA says we should have. However, it does increase our overall numbers by 68 beds in the state. I'd love to come to you and say, hey, let's build 2 more, but one bite of the apple at a time. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, and if I could follow up, Madam Chair, it's like 1.5 questions. Thank you. And then I'm going to be consistent with my themes. Again, I see the advanced planning for this project is projected to be $15.5 million. It does. I am comforted by knowing that the majority of that is going to come from federal funding. Correct? It's only about $5 million. And that's you're asking from the state, and then the remaining $10.5 million is coming from federal funds.
That's the current organization of the CIP ask, yes.
Okay, and then my follow-up question, the projected total construction cost for the City of North Las Vegas facility is about $232 million. Will we be able to get any federal assistance in construction costs for that, or is that 100% state funded?
There will be a federal match on the construction.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. And we will go to Senator Titus.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. Along that same line of questioning on wait list, you didn't really answer what our wait list is. Do you have a wait list for folks to go into the veterans' homes?
Director Wager, for the record, through the chair to the senator, we don't have a wait list as such. We have people contacting us, and it takes a while to get them into the home. I think we currently are working on, I'd have to defer to my deputy director, but I'm not sure exactly what the number is.
Are you at capacity now?
Director Wager, for the record, no, ma'am, we are not. Currently, especially after the pandemic, we fell back. We are at about 145. Again, 20 beds are set aside for the COVID and the presumptives, so 160 beds total for now, but we are working on filling that up.
Final question on the same line. Okay, Manager. So when you do the logistics of this, if it's approved and you have the funding, those folks that are now going to go from a double occupancy to single occupancy, you're going to have to move folks out of there. So are you looking at building the new one first so you can move folks? I mean, it has to be, you can't displace those in the Southern Nevada one. So can you explain the logistics there?
Director Wager, for the record, thank you for the question, and that's exactly right. The new wing would be, as I understand it, constructed first, and then we could move people in there and start working on the remodel of one area, and then there will be some movements of our residents. We're going to meet with them once this is approved and explain how all of this is going to work, because they're also wondering the same question. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, for the question.
I just had a quick question on the storage building at the Northern Nevada Veterans Home. Given the need to add this storage building for this facility not long after the facility was completed in 2019, does the State Public Works Division plan to incorporate storage buildings or other adequate storage space in the future design and construction projects of veteran homes or similar type facilities?
Ken Lefevre, for the record. The short answer is yes. We try to add storage wherever we can. What we didn't know 5 years ago when we started the Veterans Home in Sparks is that they were already using Connex boxes in Boulder City for storage of miscellaneous durable goods. So.
And thank you. It made sense, because that was going to be my follow-up. So when the designing of the Northern Nevada facility was constructed, there was information that was missing that you didn't know about the Boulder City, that they were utilizing off-site storage and thought there would be adequate storage, within the facility when the new Northern Nevada building was constructed?
Correct. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of stuff is being stored? Is it just like medical products, that kind of good stuff?
Director Wager, for the record, these are non-perishable items. So you've got your, you'd have things like masks, things like gloves, and just paper products, those kind of things like you'd find in that kind of storage facility.
Thank you so much. Next, we will go to Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have questions along the similar lines, some around the beds and others around the land donation. So with the identified shortage of beds in skilled nursing facilities for veterans, how were the 128 beds for the North Las Vegas Veterans Home determined to be appropriate for this project?
Through the initial process, it's how many beds we can fit on that site. So it's really a site-driven question, not as the director has pointed out, a needs-based, but how many beds can we get there?
So facility limited. Speaking of the facility, is the land donation from the VA Southern Nevada Health Care System to the state contingent on approval of advancing this project?
Kent Lefevre, for the record. I'm not sure about that. I know that there has been conversations with the veterans on that.
Director Wager, for the record, if I could follow up with that question. We actually were initially contacted by them, and they said this is a call from Washington saying that they would like to do this, so it's a priority for them to do this. So they were the ones that reached out to us and said, hey, we'd like to donate land to the state for $1, and so we kind of like that price, and that's how this started. So it's not necessarily contingent on, but they're going to give us the land if it's approved.
That was my next question, is what kind of assurances are in place to that if we approve this project, that land would be a part of that that agreement?
Director Wager, for the record, I have been talking to the director and the chief of staff. All of them are very excited about getting this project going and having that. There's a need for it up there. It's a ways to drive out to Boulder City, and a lot of veterans are excited about if this can move forward. They'll be able to stay in Vegas, and I think that'll be very helpful. But the VA is 100% behind this right now.
So is there like a memorandum of understanding? Like, is there something in place that even emails that say this is our intent to sell this to you if you can do this project?
I don't know, Director Wager, for the record, I don't know if I've received an email. I think I've had emails back and forth, but it's been a while since that started. I don't know if Public Works has received anything at all. But if we need to, we can get some.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll move to Assemblywoman Monroe Marino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've talked about the federal money, and I like when you said for the land $1. I like $1. That's a really good price. You can get all deals for $1. That'd be great. But how would the $10.1 million, the cost plans for this project, if this isn't approved, how will you fund that? If this isn't approved, if you don't get that federal money, how would you fund that?
I'll have the GFO representative come forward.
Good morning, members of the committee, Madam Chair. My name is Robin Hager, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Governor's Finance Office. I was waiting for this question, so I was ready. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address this issue, as we will be revising the CIP fund map and supporting legislation to copy the funding mechanism used from the 2017 legislative session basically for the Northern Nevada Veterans Home, where we will have to use general fund first to pay for it, and then when the federal money comes in, we'll put we'll put narrative in the legislation that they immediately have to pay the general fund back. But you're right, initially it is a general fund ask.
Follow up? Thank you. So, if this is approved and you put in for that grant, how soon do you anticipate that we will be notified that the grant award has been funded? And would there be any work that would start on the planning project before you got the notification of the award from the federal?
I'm going to go ahead and let the agency respond to that.
Director Wager, for the record, I apologize. I was talking to my deputy director about the waiting list question earlier, and we don't have one. But could you repeat your question, please?
Sure. So it's, when does the department anticipate the state would be notified of the award for, or the federal funds if this is approved? And would there be any work that you would start in the planning part that would commence before receipt of the confirmation for the federal award?
Director Wager, for the record, I'm going to call a friend and bring up my executive officer, chief financial officer, Joe Thiele, as he's dealt with that before.
Joe Thiele, for the record, executive officer and DVS. In order to be awarded the grant, we have to go through we have to have a plan. We have to be able to submit those plans before we can actually get a grant. So that's what this pre-planning is. And we have to pay for that up front because we won't have that grant. I can't attest to exactly when we will be awarded a grant. I can't tell you what the funding will be for the VA in the next federal fiscal year. But as the director has said, and our previous director has testified to this body, they've always awarded at some point. Does that answer your question?
It does. So the planning has to be together to submit for the grant.
We have submitted for the, Joe Thiele, for the record, we have submitted for the grant initially. Then you have to provide to move up onto the next level. You need to go, okay, here's your plan, the actual plans. They go through, they ask questions, you go back and forth. And then our state match, we'd have to say, yes, we have the state match. And then you move up on the priority list. And it just depends on what other states, if they have a health safety issue that takes priority or not, or what their funding is for a fiscal year.
Do they keep you aware of where the state is on the priority list? Do you get regular updates?
Every year they put out a priority list.
And then one last question, Madam Chair. Okay. We have statutory requirements that limits temporary transfer of general fund appropriations to 50% of the federal funds financing a project and the timing of federal reimbursements. How would the division pay invoices for this project in a timely manner?
Hi, Matthew Tuma, Deputy Director for the Department of Administration, for the record. So this project kind of shows a kind of a bifurcation in the state planning process versus the federal planning process. And so as you heard several colleagues sort of talk about this project, the nature of how the VA would award the funding would be, they would be awarding the planning reimbursement and the construction at the same time, and the construction funds at the same time. Whereas oftentimes the state will bifurcate planning and do planning in a 2-year term, and then come back at a subsequent biennium, whether it's 2 years or 4 years later, when that planning project is complete, and request the construction funds. So the overall project of this would be planning phase as well as the construction phase. And so that's the nature of the reimbursement on the planning portion, that the feds would pay that 2/3, and you'd see that same or a similar 2/3, 1/3 split for the overall project. As the GFO had recommended, they're going to, as the Deputy Director of the GFO had mentioned in their submission and some of the fund mapping for the current plan, it would, or for the current CIP, it would plan on funding this project up front with general fund dollars for the federal portion that we would then get reimbursed with, that we would get reimbursed from once the planning is complete and the overall project is awarded from the VA. So the general fund portion to support that planning amount would be well less than 50% of the overall planning and construction of the project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I did say that was my last, but I do have one more. I'm sorry. The priority list, and I should have asked you when you were at the table. You said that list comes out annually. If this is approved, would that automatically move us up the list? And we know that there's other states looking to do things with veterans in their states, other legislative bodies. Where are we at right now on the priority list? And what's the competition like?
Joe Thiele for the record. I do not know exactly where we are on the list. What will happen after this is we will start the whole planning phase so we can give them, hey, we want to build this model very similar to what we did in Sparks, that style of community. We would move up to on the priority list to the level 1 after we say we have those plans, we've submitted everything, and we say we can attest we have the state match approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. And I just had a question. I feel bad for Deputy Director Tumo to come back up. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were explaining with respect to the reimbursement, because it sounds like right now we're looking at this biennium where we're considering allocating funding for planning. And then if it's agreed to, we run into that 50%, but you're kind of saying we're not running into it because it's going to be the whole of planning and construction, but we're not approving the construction at this part. And so I'm worried, would that create any hiccups for the federal government? Or is this like the normal thing that we approve planning, then it gets awarded and they're saying you're going to get your 50% or whatever the allocation back of the planning, but we're also going to now allocate the construction funds. Then you come back the next session to ask for the difference in state funds for construction. I just kind of wanted to understand that a little better.
Matthew Tuma for the record. So, Deputy Director for the Department of Administration. So, I think this is oftentimes when we're working, when administration is working through the CIP, we are going through, we're required to go through state processes and how we go about these authorizations and these appropriations through state processes. But we're often, anytime we're dealing with federal funds or any type of individual agency funds or fee funds, there's a lot of different timing and schedules associated with with our partners that want to see these projects move forward as well. As Deputy Director of the GFO had indicated, there was a path done in the 2017 project where the federal portion was appropriated dollars that were then reimbursed by the feds once that overall construction amount and the reimbursement of the planning amount was done. And so this is the path forward that the GFO is recommending that we go forward this time around, is to create a separate appropriation within for this specific purpose that would be reimbursed upon the final award by the VA.
Thank you. Do we have any other further questions for anyone on Public Works? Well, great. Thank you guys so much for being here today and dealing with the bouncing around on questions and different topics. And with that, we'll go ahead and move on to public comment. So you guys can We'll start in Las Vegas. I see someone coming up from the front. We'll start there. And if you, sir, if you can push the mic and please state your name and spell it for the record, that'd be appreciated.
Yes, my name is Bill Hanlon, Hanlon. I'm here to discuss professional development, which I intend to give you a 2-minute lesson on math for the next couple of weeks. But the bottom line is that the more math you know, the easier it is for teachers to teach it, and it's easier for students to learn it. And the problem we have is a shortage of math teachers for a prolonged period of time. So simple examples. If I want to teach kids how to subtract, when we subtract numbers that have consecutive numbers in units column, for instance, like 12 minus 3, 13 minus 4, 14 minus 5, the answer is always 9. So that makes it easier for kids to learn. When they subtract the same numbers, like 12 minus 12, the answer is always 0. If they're going to subtract numbers that have consecutive even or odd numbers in the units column, like 12 minus 4, 13 minus 5, 14 minus 6, the good news, math is so damn easy, the answer is always 8. The problem that we have is teachers do not have content-based professional development, and they don't have enough of it. So, unfortunately, a lot of our students are being taught math by learning these math facts separately, and they're doing it in a way that takes a lot of time for the kids, and they don't learn them efficiently or effectively. So what I'm asking, and I'm going to continue to ask for the next 3 weeks as we go up through logarithms and trigonometry, is that not only do you increase the RPDP budget, but you increase it by at least doubling it or tripling it. Because the amount of money, you're a money committee, thank God that you can do numbers, is the amount of money that's increased in the current governor's proposal is actually a decrease, because the RPDPs had to absorb a teacher raise last session, and now they have more teacher raises, you have PERS, and you have health. If we want our students to learn effectively, then we have to make sure that teachers have the content knowledge to do that. And we know that people who are supervising teachers, particularly in the math area, know a hell of a lot less math than the teachers they're supervising, so that instruction cannot improve. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Is there anyone else there in Las Vegas who wishes to give public testimony? It doesn't look like there's anyone there. So we will go to here in Carson City. Do we have anyone here in Carson City who wishes to give public comment this morning?
Good morning, Melanie Young, Deputy Administrator. I did want to respond to Assemblyman Yeager's question earlier that I did not have an answer for you for. The Nevada Youth Training Center, we're budgeted for 64 youth. However, we're staffed for 48. Due to vacancies, we can only have 48. The current census is 36. We have 28 males and 8 females, and more will be coming on next week. So thank you.
Is there anyone else here in Carson City who wishes to give public comment? Great. Next, we'll go ahead and move to BPS. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone lines who wishes to give public comment this morning?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. Do we have any comments or remarks from any committee members this morning? With that, then we'll go ahead and close this subcommittee hearing. Thank you, guys.